Hi everyone. Honestly, Deborah Messing here is not sure where to start. At 33 years old, I'm doing great in my marketing job and felt I had last worked out how to handle all the drama in my family. All changed, though, when my younger sister Janet began organizing her wedding. I wanted nothing more than to assist her to design the ideal day, but I soon found it would be far more difficult than I had thought. Our dad, Jeremy, loomed largest shadow over the whole affair. He never has been the same after his divorce. He's been struggling and sliding farther into a drinking and bad decision loop. And Julie, his current girlfriend, is among the worst decisions he has taken. I couldn't get rid of this unpleasant feeling from the minute I met her. She simply didn't sit right with me. Janet abruptly turned to me one afternoon as she and I were selecting arrangements from a floral shop, her face darkened with anxiety. Her voice gentle but slightly desperate. "Deborah, do you think Dad will actually show up sober?" Breathing deeply, I tried to remain hopeful for her benefit. "I really hope so," I answered, trying to grin. "For your sake, Janet, I really do." Deeply down, though, I wasn't sure. The closer we got to the wedding day, the more I felt like I wasn't simply her maid of honor. Hoping for the best felt inadequate. I was full-time peacekeeper starting now. Aaron, my boyfriend, was a rock throughout. He was always able to help me to cool off when I was whirling. Every time I got too excited, he would gently tell me, "Babe, you can't control everything." I know, I would say, while in my heart the anxiety would not allow me to relax. I couldn't help but wonder. I never forgive Dad should he call off Janet's wedding. Though everything already was hectic, I had no idea things were about to get even more so. I visited my best friend, Christina, for coffee around 1 week before the wedding. Christina has always been my go-to consultant. She is the voice of reason I so much needed. Hoping she may help me sort the turmoil in my thoughts, I dumped everything to her. "What's actually going on with Julie and you?" Christina moved forward and inquired, raising an eyebrow. Her voice suggested she already thought something was odd. I lowered my voice as though someone could hear us and looked about anxiously. "She seems just different, Christina," I said. Her fast latches on Dad and her constant muttering of things to him. And get this, one evening I heard Julie on the phone discussing some significant score she was about to perform. Her voice was quiet and reserved, and my gut turned right away. As I told Christina, her eyes grew wide. Sharp with anxiety. "You think she's scamming your dad?" she questioned. I said, "I'm going to find out. Not sure exactly." That chat set me ablaze. I wanted explanations since I could ignore the persistent sense that something wasn't right. Late at night following work, I was trying to make connections by browsing Julie's social media. In an attempt to clarify her unexpected presence in Dad's life, I even made subdued calls to a couple of his old pals. I became more uncomfortable the more I dug. It was like trying to fit together a puzzle, but I wasn't sure what picture would show up once it was finished. Janet and I were at the site making some last inspections the day before the wedding. The decorations were coming together exquisitely, and for a moment I let myself unwind. But that peace broke when Dad and Julie arrived uninvited. "Daddy!" Janet cried and raced to meet him, outstretched arms. She seemed happy, but my heart fell the instant I saw him. He was already inebriated. His smile was haphazard and his words garbled. Julie, on the other side, seemed calm, too composed. Her keen eyes flicked over the space as if she were sizing everything. She purred, putting her arm around Ander. "Let's go check out the bar." She looked at me smugly, knowing, then turned him aside. Though I swallowed it for Janet's benefit, anger burned inside me. I turned to her just as her contented smile wavered and tears filled her eyes. "Deborah," she began with shaky voice. Before she could say anything else, I drew her tightly into a hug. "Don't worry, sis," I said emphatically. "Tomorrow is about you and Patrick. Nothing is going to spoil it. Still, deep down, I wasn't quite sure. According to them, ours was building, and there is usually peace before a storm. I had no idea, though, it would strike with hurricane-like power. The marriage ceremony itself was magnificent. Janet exchanged vows with Patrick and looked simply lovely in her gown, her face shining with delight. Watching her up there, for a brief, brilliant moment it felt as if all the tumult had vanished. Let me dream. Perhaps, just maybe, we could make it through today without any major calamities. That delicate hope, though, could not endure. My tummy fell the minute we entered the reception. Dad was there, drink in hand, by the bar, Julie clutching to his arm as though she were terrified to let go. His laughter was way too loud, and his face reddened. His drunkenness was blatantly clear once more. Aaron, who had been at my side all day, bent in close. His voice sounded subdued. Sensing my strain, he inquired, "You okay?" Trying to control my breathing, I tightened my hands. Muttering, "I have to hold it together for Janet," I forced a stiff smile. Still within, though, I was raging. All I wanted was for Janet to have the ideal day she so well deserved. I knew the storm was about to break, and it wouldn't be beautiful. As I watched Dad stumble over to a gathering of visitors, splashing his drink and laughing too loudly. Though deep down I knew it was only a matter of time before things spiraled out of control, I forced a smile and murmurs assurances. As nighttime progressed, the tension in the room grew thicker. Dad's laughter grew louder, his motions sloppier, and Julie's eyes flicked over the stadium with a glitter that twisted my gut. Something felt profoundly wrong, and I couldn't get rid of the discomfort. Janet murmured, pulling on my arm, "Deborah?" her voice quivering. "Dad is creating a scene here." I went to her and forced a confident voice unlike what I could feel. "I will handle it," I said. Breathing deeply, I went toward where Dad was trying an unsteady Macarena, laughing loudly and almost falling over with every step. He seemed to have no shred of self-awareness or a concern in the world. Keeping my voice as cool as possible, "Dad," I added, "let's step outside for some fresh air." He mumbled, "Nonsense," waved me off dramatically. "I'm celebrating the big day of my baby daughter." He tried a sloppy spin and almost knocked over an adjacent table. Julie appeared by his side, firmly clutching his arm before I could stop him. She yelled, "Leave him alone," her tone tight and defensive. "He's simply having fun." I answered calmly, "This isn't about fun," but my voice was tight with irritation. "It's about honoring Janet on her big day." Julie's eyes narrowed and her lips curved into a scowl. "You believe you're absolutely flawless. Always present as though you are in charge, as though you are superior to everyone else." The words struck a chord. Though I attempted to keep my voice calm, I felt the heat climb in my chest. This relates to Janet, not me. She deserves more than this circus offers. The dispute grew rapidly, and I signaled for us to move into a quieter corner so that things wouldn't blow out right in the heart of the reception. But with every exchange, our voices became higher, the strain between us spilling over. "You know nothing about our family," I spat, my tolerance fraying as I glared her down. Julie's face sank darkly. "Your dad prefers my company over yours," she said. "I know one thing." The words hit like a slap. Something inside of me caught fire. "Oh, quite literally," I shot back, my voice shaking with rage. "Is that before or after you empty him of his money, Julie?" Her expression contorted with rage, and before I could register what was happening, she pushed at me. She took off her heels sandal one quick sweep and swung it toward my head. As I felt the painful impact of the heel striking my temple, time seemed to slow. My cranium hurt, and all around me anarchy broke out. Visitors scattered and yelled. Chairs turned over, and the audience erupted in terrified yells and gasps. Amid the fog of suffering and uncertainty, I could only think about Janet. How had this come to be? Though I had sworn to guard her happiness, here we were, her wedding day descending into a dream. In the throng, I saw Janet's shocked expression. Patrick held her back, paralyzed in shock, his arms wrapped defensively about her as she wept. Knowing this was meant to be her perfect day, and it was anything but, my heart broke at the sight. Security arrived, grabbed Julie, and hauled her away as she struggled and yelled obscenities at everybody within earshot. Her piercing shrieks accentuated the anarchy in the venue. Dazed, I stood there, gripping the side of my head, and felt the throbbing agony from the blow and tears sting. The once jolly gathering around me now was a flurry of scattering visitors, knocked down decorations, and startled muttering. Janet would treasure this day of celebration as a lifelong memory. Rather, it had descended into a nightmare none of us would forget. As the cops arrived, my stillness matched their eerie lighting over what ought to have been a glorious evening. Julie was hauled away in shackles, her rebellious yells resounding through the night. I saw Dad in that fleeting instant. He appeared totally lost, pain and uncertainty on his face. I realized, for the first time, things would never be the same. The days following the wedding blurred. Between submitting police reports, interviewing people, and spending many restless nights, I felt as though I was living in an endless dream. Every sound made me leap. The picture of Julie lunging at me with her sandal kept playing in my head over and over like a terrible, relentless loop. My support through all. Aaron held me near every night. The dreams struck. "You're safe now, Deborah," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. But feeling safe seemed unattainable no matter how often he repeated it. How could I, when the girlfriend of my own father had abused me during the wedding of my sister? From something like that, how could one possibly start to recover? Janet was a wreck quite naturally. She looked like a shell of herself when I visited her about 1 week later. She can even meet my stare. Her formerly brilliant eyes were dull. All those months of preparing? She continued, her voice weighed with grief. And for what? My wedding will always be recalled as the day someone sought to harm my sister. "Janet, I'm so sorry," I said, the guilt pressing down on me. Had failed, having sworn to guard her happiness. She nodded, cutting me off. "I know it's not your fault, Deborah, but still I can't help feeling like our family is cursed or something." Janet was drowning in her own suffering. Dad was living in total denial. He contacted me nonstop, leaving voicemails that caused my blood to boil. "Deborah, sweetie, let us not blow this out of proportion." One message started. Julie simply felt agitated. She intended no injury at all. After all she had done, hearing him defend her like that caused my stomach to turn over with wrath. How might he explain her behavior? Still on her side, how could he be? Dad showing up at my apartment drunk on alcohol a few days later marked the last straw. When I opened the door, he was slightly swaying with glazed, unfocused eyes. "Dad, you'd have to leave," I murmured, my voice as steady as I could have controlled. "But Pumpkin, we're family," he said, his voice sad. "We need to stick together." Looking at him, something hardened inside me, this fractured, unrecognizable guy who had before been my father. "No, Dad," I responded with great conviction. "We're done. I'm not able to do this anymore." The hurt in his eyes almost caused me to waver. Almost. But I knew I had done the right thing when I closed the door in his face. If I kept opening some cuts, they wouldn't heal. My always driven best friend, Christina, had decided to investigate Julie's past. She gave me a call over to her apartment one evening, her voice slightly urgent. She piled papers across her coffee table when I arrived. "Deborah, look at this," she said, sounding austere. "Julie's got a record, assault, fraud, theft, you name it." My thoughts whirling, I looked at the documents in incredulity. There it was, black and white evidence of everything I had suspected but never had the confidence to say. Julie was dangerous, not only nasty. I went over the paperwork, each page turning my gut tighter with a terrible awareness. How did Dad find himself ignorant of this? My voice just above a whisper, I asked. Christina stammered, her lips clamped together. Then she moaned. That's the thing, Deborah, she added with a weighty tone. I believe he understood. The truth struck me like several tons of bricks. I looked at her, ready her to say she was mistaken, but she wasn't. Joint bank accounts, dubious money transactions, and other financial red flags all pointed straight forward for me. It was not only that Julie had controlled Dad. She had taken part. He was an accomplice, not only a victim. One of the worst things I have ever had to do was tell Janet what we had found. We sat in her little, comfortable kitchen, the unopened wedding presents piled in the corner like relics of a dream turned sour. Tears running down Janet's cheeks, she said. I can't believe it. How could he treat us? How could he let her? She shook her head, then trailed off. I no longer even know him. My heart throbbing for her, I reached for her hand. I'm not sure Dad is either, I said gently. But just now we have to guard ourselves. This cannot bring us down. We cannot let it. Janet stared up at me, her tear-streaked face stiffening with will. I am here with you, Deborah, always. Her will gave me strength, but it did not clear the shame that hung over me. I had so completely wrecked whatever remained of Dad's life by revealing his crimes. Deep down, though, I knew I wasn't the one who had wrecked him. He had accomplished that all on his own. On my own, the combination of guilt, doubt, and wrath grew intolerable. I thus resolved to seek assistance. That's how I found myself attempting to make sense of the mess my life had gotten me seated in a therapist's office for the first time. It's normal to feel conflicted, my therapist, Dr. Frank, said to me in one of our sessions. Her voice was like an anchor in the tempest of my feelings, quiet and consistent. You've experienced something horrific. You are bereaved of the father you knew. I watched my hands and felt the sting of tears. I wasn't ready to weep. But shouldn't I despise him after all he has done? There's no should when it comes to emotions, she said gently. What's vital is that you acknowledge how you feel and give yourself the space to work through it. She remarked, working through it seems straightforward, but it wasn't. The hurt, resentment, and treachery did not go away overnight, but that day when I left her office I sensed a faint flutter of hope. Though hardly much, it was a beginning. Perhaps, just perhaps, I could reconstruct something decent from the remains of my family's history. 5 months following the wedding to Gokul, I discovered I was in a position I never would have imagined, happy. In spite of everything, I came to see I was surrounded by love and encouragement. Janet, Aaron, Christina, and I developed into an unbeatable group. Our common suffering has created a link far stronger than before. The 4 of us were seated around my dining table one evening enjoying food and jokes. The place exuded warmth, the kind of delight I had once dreaded I had lost permanently. Janet lifted her glass, a tiny but real smile flashing over her face. To new beginnings, she murmured in a steady, hopeful voice. Then to family, the one we decide upon. We clinked glasses, and I felt not broken for the first time in what seemed like eternity. I sensed whole. That was the realization that I had the will to meet the future, whatever it brought, and right at hand was my chosen family. Grasping my glass and clinking it with my sisters, a smile pulled at my mouth. The toast seemed like the beginning of one chapter finishing symbolically. But while Janet and I were in a moment of peace, the maelstrom around Julie's trial roared on and attracted the notice of every local media source. The courtroom looked like a carnival now, and day after day, seated there, my stomach turned over as more of Julie's sinister past surfaced. Dad sat next to me, his face white and still in shock as her past crimes, fraud, theft, and manipulation spanning decades were exposed. Every fresh discovery felt to our already damaged family as another blade. Still, the most startling incident had not yet materialized. Christina and I had been nonstop behind the scenes trying to find out how completely Dad had participated in Julie's plans. Examining bank records, emails, and financial activities, we created a picture far worse than I had anticipated. I felt my breath seize in my throat as our attorney got up during the trial. "Your Honor," he said, his voice firm and clear, "we have documentation proving Jeremy Messing's involvement in Miss Lang's fraudulent activities." The courtroom went still, and I heard Dad gasp hard next to me. I refused to look at him. At last the truth was on show. He was more than just Julie's manipulated victim. He had been involved actively in her plans. My personal life unexpectedly and favorably changed as the legal drama developed. My employer phoned me into his office one lovely Thursday afternoon. Unknowing what to anticipate, I stammered in. Still, his friendly grin calmed me right away. "Deborah," he leaned closer and said, "your work really has impressed us greatly. Over the past year, your resilience and inventiveness have been rather exceptional. I'm pleased to let you know we're pushing you toward Senior Marketing Director." I watched him in incredulity. "Thanks," I murmured, my voice quivering with delight. He stated simply, shaking my hand, "You've earned it." I grabbed my phone to contact Aaron right out of his office. "You won't believe this," I said. Shaking with enthusiasm, I got promoted. Aaron's happy giggle rang down the line. "That's very wonderful, sweetheart. You truly make me proud. Tonight is celebration time?" There were flashes of excitement and hope even among all the anarchy. Driven to keep ahead, Janet and Patrick made a wise choice. They chose to reaffirm their vows. This time the occasion was not grandiose. Their backyard was the scene of a tiny, intimate wedding attended just by close friends and relatives. "Second time's the charm," Patrick said, Janet laughing at his friendly smile as they traded rings once more. As I watched them, I became really calm. Though they were healing, the past left wounds that never completely disappeared. Gradually but surely. At last the day Julie's sentence was scheduled arrived. Tension in the courtroom was high as the judge was ready to render her decision. Perched there, I considered how much had changed since that terrible wedding day. Though we had endured so much suffering and treachery, yet we had survived. We had developed greater strength. We were going ahead. I got up when the court asked for victim impact comments. My voice is strong, although my hands quivered just slightly. "The scars from that night run deep," I said, looking steadily. "But they have made me stronger. What happened shattered bits of my family and left wounds I never would have thought would heal. Still, I discovered resiliency among that suffering. I grew strong, and I came upon the family I wanted to be by my side. The weight dropped from my chest as I spoke. This was my time to recover control, not only for Janet, but also for my family, for the life we were reconstructing, and for myself." The room was still for a beat after I finished. The judge nodded gravely next then. Julie got her punishment and closure followed from it. That day when I left the courtroom, I could feel sunlight on my face, and came on to something I hadn't experienced in a long time: peace. The storm has blown past. Though we were different from what we had been, we were more robust. We had located our way back to one another, and together we were at last prepared to welcome the future. I looked at Julie and felt a boost in strength. Here was my chance to recover my life, to separate the survivor I had evolved from the person I had been. "I'm here today," I said, my voice firm, "not as a victim, but as a survivor." I experienced an anticipated closure as Julie was being driven away in handcuffs. The weight of that protracted, agonizing chapter seemed to be starting to lift at last. I could breathe naturally for the first time in what seemed like eternity. But the actual festivity arrived 1 month later. Janet, Patrick, Aaron, Christina, and I got together at my preferred restaurant to mark my promotion and all we had overcome together. The evening was pleasant and illuminated by plenty. There is a kind of night that reminds you of life that is good once more. Rising her glass, Christina murmured, "To Deborah?" Her smile was broad and proud. "T.G. strongest person I know." I couldn't let her run off without intervening. I said to all of us, raising my glass and looking around the table, these were the folks who had supported me over the toughest year of my life, the people who never let me fall when everything felt as though it was collapsing. For proving that family is about loyalty and love rather than only blood, as we told stories, mocking one another and remembering the highs and lows, we clinked glasses and laughed aloud. Something changed within of me. I became aware of how much had changed in me as much as in my life. The preceding year had resembled a nightmare of suffering, treachery, and loss. Oddly, though, it had also been a gift. It had revealed me the people truly important, showed me my potential strength, and gave me the bravery to cut out the poison dragging me back. Surrounded by individuals who truly loved me, sitting there I experienced peace, something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not the ideal happy ending I had hoped for as a small child. It carried memories I hope I could remove as well as scars. But that made it lovely as it was real. I felt forward looking for the second time in years. The family I had located, the love all around me, and the power I had discovered within of me made me appreciate things. And thus, at least in this chapter of my life, ends my story. Now, though, I find myself wondering, in my position, would you have given your father another opportunity following all he accomplished? Alternatively, might you have maintained those limits as I did? This is a difficult choice, and I know many of you have dealt with poisonous family members in such manner. I would be much interested in your opinions. Comments allow you to share your experiences. From your personal life, how have you managed challenging family dynamics? Should my narrative strike a chord with you, kindly click that like button and give subscription consideration for more true tales and candid discussions on negotiating difficult relationships. Some thought. Sharing gives us strength collectively and maybe even helps someone else negotiate the storm.